This episode of the Pedalshift Project is brought to you by Hawbuck Dyneema Wallets. On your next bike tour, leave the bulk at home and keep just the cash and cards you need in a super strong, ultralight wallet. Learn more about the tech behind the wallet at hawbuck.camp. Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Pedalshift Project. The Pedalshift Project is a series of conversations, thoughts, and experiments around the bike touring lifestyle. From tips and tricks to ideas on how to ride your ride. Let's shrink the world by bike. Show notes and more are available at pedalshift.net, and you can email the show, pedalshift@pedalshift.net, or call the voicemail hotline, 202-930-1109, and check Pedalshift out on all the socials as well.
Folks, this is Tim's computer voice. His voice is still super shot, so I'm grabbing the mic to do the intro for part 1 of Tour Journals Volume 13, Cross Florida. Change of plans. We're going to split up the tour into 3 episodes that are all going to come out between now and the live show on the 22nd. Each episode will cover a day of the ride. Look for part 2 in the next few days and part 3 at the usual 7 a.m. Thursday slot. Central Florida has 1,000 personalities. Sure, we all know the theme parks and the big cities of Tampa and Orlando, but there are also huge swaths of barely developed pastures, orange groves, irrigation canals and lakes to catch a cyclist's eye while pedaling them miles away. A lot of people come to Florida to escape the chill of winter and return with stories and surprises. This tour was no different.
It is T-minus, 2 days. It's the Monday before I leave, and I am excited, a word I use very often when it comes to bicycle touring, to have everything pretty much all together. I'm sort of wandering around the apartment here in DC, just sort of going between the two places where I've got most of the stuff pulled together. And, as I look inside the bag and the setup, I think that I'm in pretty good shape for this ride. Just as sort of a bit of an overview, if you hadn't listened to the prior podcast where it was sort of the setup for everything, the Cross Florida tour, this is part of Pedalshift Tour Journals Volume 13, will be from Tampa, Florida to Central Florida to Cocoa Beach. I guess it's all Central Florida. It's a cross Central Florida tour. And I have everything, like I mentioned, largely ready to go. The one thing that I haven't done yet is another kind of thorough once over of the Brompton. Now, I mentioned this in plenty of podcasts before, but I'm going to be taking the little orange clown bike with me on this one, mainly because it was the cheapest way to get a bike down to Florida. I tend to fly Alaska Airlines, as I've mentioned, and they're great for flying bikes, but they don't really do Florida very well from DC. So I'm going to go to the second choice, which would be Southwest Airlines. They're really good for Bromptons, and that sort of decided it for me. It is the least expensive way to get a bike down there that I like to ride. And there's something about this bike and Florida that seems to be a perfect fit. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I've got a brand new tire on the rear of the Brompton, and that, I think, will make things a lot better. It also got a little bit of a once-over by mechanics, so I'm going to give it my once-over just to make sure it's in tip-top touring shape in the next day or so, and probably get a little bit of riding in. As it turns out, the weather has really turned around up here in the Northeast after a horrific bout of winter weather, including very stormy days and snow and ice and sub-zero temperatures. We are having a bout of spring right now, a typical February thaw, so it would be good to get out on this ride, maybe with the gear loaded down on it, just to see how it feels. It is, I don't think, any heavier of a load on the front luggage block than I've ever had before. It's hard to get heavier within that Ortley back pannier that hangs on the front of that luggage block, but it may be close because everything's in there, all of my clothes, toiletries, things like that. But because I'm not carrying camping gear this time, I just think it's going to be a lot lighter of a ride and possibly easier. One of the things that I've had to deal with when I do a more loaded version of touring on a Brompton is I have to adjust my mileage expectations down a little bit. This time, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think this is going to feel a lot more, I don't know, light, for lack of a better way of putting it. I guess it's the perfect way of putting it. But that's going to be kind of the best way to get started here. I don't have much else that comes to mind as I sit here and now, other than the weather looks fantastic, which is kind of the worst thing for me to say because it's definitely taunting the bicycle touring gods. But it doesn't look like there's going to be any rain to speak of. It's going to be mornings that start in the, at worst, upper 50s, low 60s, and at worst, at the high side, around maybe 4 or 5 o'clock, closer to 4 o'clock, we'll top out in the low 80s. A lot of sun exposure. I expect that to be an issue. So I'm making sure, I've got sunglasses, I got hats, I got arm shields for my arms if I go short sleeve. So I think that this is just going to be a relatively low challenge from the elements. I think that the higher challenges are going to be from the types of roads that I'm going to be on, how vehicles play with cyclists on some of these roads. I think it's going to be okay. I wouldn't have purposefully made a tour or a trip around really difficult roads, but you just never know. It's going to be new to me, and I'm looking forward to kind of testing this out because this could be a really good go-to winter tour for the future because it's inexpensive to get down to Central Florida from the DC area. It is typically quite good weather in the winter down there, at least good enough for bicycle touring. So this might be something that I can make kind of an annual event, sort of like going out to the West Coast during the summer, because during the summer, that's a great time to do the West Coast. So, just trying out all these different things and then maybe trying some different routes in the future. The nice thing about the Central Florida route, like I had mentioned before, that was superior to doing the Florida Keys, which probably would have been my preferred route, is that the cost of this is much, much lower. When you look into camping and lodging options down in the Keys during this time of year, they're easily 2, 3, maybe even 4 times as high compared to Central Florida. So that's why this is a little bit nicer. Now, the downside is I'm not going to be going by, the Florida Keys, and the beautiful blue waters that would be all around me during that. Instead, I'm going to be going by a lot of lakes and a lot of, frankly, swampy kind of rural areas, which have their charms as well. I think it's going to be a fun trip. I've been looking forward to this since the beginning of December when I was first kind of throwing the hat over the wall on this. So it'll be good. I'm going to be leaving behind DC that's actually going to have balmy spring-like temperatures. So it almost feels like I'm wasting the good weather, but at the same time, it's hard to complain. So a little bit more of a once-over on the gear, and off we go. By about 24 hours from now, I should be done with day 1. So we're at T-1 right now. And I just did a full shakedown ride, not terribly long, but just sort of in my neighborhood here in DC with the Brompton fully loaded. I got the wheels really pumped up because the issue with Bromptons, as many of you know, the tires are very, very high pressure, much higher pressure than any other tire that I ride on with my other bike. And I've got a few different varieties. I tend to ride a little bit lower pressure, especially on trails and things like that. I think Russ Roca over at Pathless Pedal is hashtagging that as the supple life. Yeah, it's kind of like that. On the Brompton, though, you're not going to be doing that. You could hear him at Brompton just sort of fell. I have something on the rear rack here because I was doing the full ride, or the full setup with a bag on the back. The bag on the back is not going to be holding anything. It's just actually the best spot for the duffel. And, after seeing it sort of fall after being just leaning on something, I may rethink where that duffel goes, just because when there's no kickstand, obviously, on the Brompton. What you do is you tuck that bottom wheel under, rear wheel under, and that ends up being sort of the kickstand component for it. And it works out really, really well. When you got something on the rack, though, you can't. So we'll have to kind of experiment with that a little bit more. Normally, I have quite a bit on the rear of the bike. And as a result, I can never put it in that mode when I'm typically touring. So this trip might be a little bit different if I can figure out a way to sort of just put it on top of the Ortlieb on front. bike rode tremendously well. As I was mentioning, the tires are usually between 85 and often upwards of 100 PSI. I don't think I'll rock it quite up to 100. I have a pump with a gauge on it, but it's one of those situations, it's one of those kind of reverse locking ones, so it lets out a tremendous amount of air before you actually get it in, especially for a high PSI tire. So I'm not even sure if I'm even remotely close to 100, much less 85. But it rode really nicely, and I think I'm going to keep the tires at this pressure. The downside to rolling at that high of a pressure is you're never going to be able to hand pump up to that height unless you've got a floor pump. So I'm sort of at the mercy of gas stations and bike shops to help me re-inflate if necessary. So I'm going to try to roll on the higher side of things to start and go from there. Boy, oh boy, the roads around here aren't exactly smooth as glass, so on a Brompton with really inflated tires, you're going to feel a lot of the shocks, but man, it just felt fine. It felt really nice. It's going really well. I think that the mechanics of this are about as set up as well as possible for this ride. Make sure you remind me of that if I have any mechanicals. Hey, Tim, day -1. You said it was perfect. Good morning from Cypress Point Park here in beautiful Tampa, Florida. I am currently dropped off and I am getting my stuff pulled together here, making sure that I don't lose anything. The Lyft driver was very nice, but the mapping system didn't quite get us all the way here, and I foolishly said, no, it's cool, just drop me off here. And it's just not an ideal spot. But it is not his fault. It is mine for being foolish. But you may hear as I'm going along, I'm getting the saddle in. Got to pull out a tool so that I can cut the zip ties. I did this for the first time. I zip tied up the Brompton, which I think was a good idea. It makes it so that it doesn't come out of its fold when the seat post is up, which I do for rolling it around. A lot of people use the handlebars, but since I have the type of handlebars that are sort of wide, it's just not so ideal. So that's always been a bit of a problem for me, but then I got the great idea of using some zip ties, and it worked perfectly, and the bike was much more maneuverable. It's pretty maneuverable as it is, but it worked out really, really well. So pulling out my Leatherman multi-tool. Big ups to Southwest Airlines, got us here not just on time, but early. And, nobody even looked twice at the bike, which, normally I at least get is that a bike from people in the know, but this time, no. And people were just sort of like, I don't want to say nonplussed, but just not all that interested in the oddity of the bike. But got it in over the overhead. The plane was only about half full, so ultimately I probably wasted the $20 for the early check-in, but, it's a peace of mind thing when all is said and done. Probably can hear the various sounds that I'm hearing as well. If the microphone's catching it, some lawn mowing, a sound I have not heard in a while. The sounds of planes taking off. We are about 2 miles as the crow flies from the airport. So this was just a really ideal starting point. I have now successfully undone the zip ties, and everything seems fine. It's a nice thing about having the bike with you is that, I know exactly how it was handled. And one other thing I did was I really tightened up the seat post, quick release. Over time that loosens, and what I find is the bike will, I guess the best way to put it is it will sink over time. My X number 100 of pounds will just push it down over time. And you notice that over a long ride. Short ride, you never notice it. All right, a lot of gabbing here. This is probably not the most scintillating podcast stuff. I just was excited to get recording since I'm here. So more to come. From, I believe it's Ybor City. This is the kind of midday update as I adjust here. I am going to try to do this as a ride. Let's see, I am on East 7th, which I believe will turn into Broadway in a little bit. And I'm rocking the sidewalk for now. This is that transition point between city and, I don't even know what to call this. It's not quite suburb, but it's more of an industrial area. I'm out by where the freeways are. And I just don't think, despite there being, pardon the wind here, a lot of headwinds today, despite there being 2 lanes, my instincts are saying better on the sidewalk, which isn't that bad. A little bit of debris, but it's not too bad. The riding has been perfectly fine so far. Busy today. I'm getting to the point where normally I don't eat breakfast and I eat around noon. We're getting towards noon. I did have breakfast today because I'm not stupid. Haven't gone quite 10 miles yet, but I'm thinking if there is a good, and when I say good, I mean mediocre fast food place. Well, this is interesting. Sidewalk sort of ends. I could have popped into traffic and died. I chose not to. Still on the main thoroughfares bus route. So I'm certainly not out into the wilderness yet. Not that today is much of that. Once I'm on this road for quite a while, and then it's real quiet until I hit Lakeland. But feeling pretty strong. I've done about a quarter of the ride so far. I should mention, immediately when I had the opportunity at the bathrooms at the park, I went to short sleeves, arm shades, and shorts. I am really glad I did that. I think that I'm probably going to be wearing this as my main ride out outfit for this entire trip, which is interesting because, I was initially worried, I wonder if I'll be a little too chilly in the mornings. No. Answer no. I think I'll be just fine. I think the question is, how early can I go so that I can avoid the bulk of the heat of the day? Crossing North 34th Street here, and I will be getting a bike lane, which is, I believe, something that I'm going to end up having for a good chunk of this part of the route. Let's see, I've got a green, so I'm going to go for it. Interestingly, I like using crosswalks when possible in big intersections like that, but the crosswalk didn't go for me, but I had the green light. I basically just choose the signals I want. Well, seeing as there's a bit of wind, I may hold off and talk a little bit more when I have less wind and less movement. So, ta-ta for now. Just made a right turn onto MLK Boulevard and a nice bike lane in Mango, Florida. Went through a bit of a rural stretch there. Saw an egret, which was nice and beautiful, and I expect to see many, many, many more of those. The riding has been fine. Not the most picturesque route. I expect that to be kind of what this route is, to be honest. It's not a mountain vista kind of route. It's more of a, hey, I'm crossing Florida by bike kind of route. But that's all right. See, my first Publix, which is kind of a regional chain of grocery stores, got a pretty good load up at lunch, and I have an apple pie that remains. So I think I'm going to be sticking with that. I've had very little water, which strikes me as a terrible idea, but I feel fine for now. I do know that Plant City, that will be my next. Right there. I do avoid somebody dressed as the Statue of Liberty because it's tax season for that brand of tax prep people. Plant City, Florida. I think it's known for growing plants. To me, it is the home of Plant City divorciorias. I am probably mispronouncing that. I apologize to anyone who speaks Spanish language. There are just signs every 15 to 20 feet advertising that service. If you're in the market for a divorce in Plant City, I know a person. Interestingly, not a lot here. I have about 2/3 of a bottle of water left. So if I do not run into a gas station, not the end of the world. I've been making very good time and I'm feeling fine. I had half of that apple pie that was left over. Not hungry, not terribly thirsty. Well, not thirsty at all. It's been nice. It's just a nice day. After having such cruddy weather, really for the last year of touring, my tours have rarely been in nice weather. It's so hard to complain. It's full sun. I'm really exposed. It's warmer than I was expecting, but I'm fine. And it's just been interesting terrain. It's I wouldn't call it swampy, although there are certainly some palm trees and what you would expect for Florida. It's very grassy, and it's just tons of irrigation ditches, and I think I'll be seeing a lot of lakes soon, probably more so on the second and third days. But yeah, and although it is road riding, it's really, although the sound may belie it, it's really not that bad. The shoulder is excellent today, and this one in particular has about every quarter to every half mile, it's got a bike lane designation. So that's nice to have, because it just reminds drivers, bicyclists use this too. And interesting, the strip, as I'm going over one of the bike lane designations, this strip has little knobs on it, so it would be a signal to drivers if they are coming a little bit too close into my side of things, so that's good. A+ on the infrastructure. It does look like there's stuff up here at the intersection, so I think I may drink up the water I have and get a new one, and then I know I'll be all right. I think it's maybe another 12 to 15 miles until the end of my day, which is pretty good. That would be a 40-mile day, all said and done, and a good way to start off day one of a tour. It's always good, in my opinion, to start off a little light, because sometimes it takes a little bit to get into the bike touring state of mind, and today's A+. A+ so far. On the outskirts of Plant City right now, and I'm sitting here going, for a place that has a strawberry festival, I'm not smelling strawberries. On the West Coast, there's part of the West Coast tour that you're near the, where are you near? Monterey-ish, and you go through this, maybe it's Morro Bay, I don't know, it's somewhere in that area. It's like a 200-mile area. Anyways, you go by strawberry fields, and it smells like you're in a jam jar, right? So I'm expecting anything even remotely like this. Well, here I am on the outskirts. I'm going past a couple of plants, and it smells, I swear to God, like a strawberry Pop-Tart. It's amazing. I could go for a strawberry Pop-Tart. Well into Lakeland now, and wrapping up the last few miles. The nice part is I'm now off of 92 on a more of a surfacey road. Very low traffic. And of course, right now, not sure if I'm even able to be picked up much at all. The predominant winds are out of the east, making it full-on headwind. Because, of course, but it's gentle. It's not that big of a deal. Not very gusty. I think that it's supposed to get windy on Saturday. But by then, I should not have an issue. Already been in touch with the folks who are hosting me for the night, and I'm all set for about a 4 p.m. arrival, which is pretty good timing, I think, considering I left at 10:30 or so. Let me see. Well, it's a little on the slow side, but I did do a few breaks. I'll be curious because I'm using the directions and ride with GPS. It'll be able to tell me what my average speed is. I feel like I was very fast to start, and I feel like I've been on a lot of the lower gears towards the end here. I do think I'd mentioned on a prior show that Florida is deceptively hilly. I think this is the area where it is this second half of the day. So I'll have to take a look at the elevation chart. I mean, it's largely flat, but I think it could be enough of an incline, especially a long, low one. A long, low one? A long, slow one? Clearly at the end of my day, that may have slowed me down. At least it feels like I'm slowing down. Anyways, wrapping it up, and we'll talk more to wrap up day one. All right, we are on the shores of Lake Morton in Lakeland, Florida. Wow, what a major improvement to my scenery, because it was a low grade, like maybe like a 2 out of 10 kind of scenery kind of day, except for this beautiful town that I ended up in, and where I'm staying is literally steps away from this gorgeous lake. So that is fantastic. Exotic birds. Florida's not home, meaning I am not used to the wildlife of Florida. Let's just put it that way. I mean, I've seen these things before. I've seen these egrets and stuff like that. I'm looking at them right now. I don't know if you can hear them. I'm hoping to get some better images tomorrow morning when maybe it's a little less crazy out. I'm close enough to the downtown area that I am going to walk just to kind of give the legs a different type of exercise. Felt good, felt strong. I do need to get some more sunscreen because I got hammered in the exposed areas, as one would expect. So that'll be a tomorrow morning thing. I'm also going to try to get out pretty early, 10 more miles to travel tomorrow, and then another 10 more on top of that distance-wise for Friday. So earlier the better for me. I didn't get too hot. I actually didn't drink a ton of water. I probably would have drank more water had I had it. So I think I'm gonna get at least another bottle. But I do have to say, in recent years, I tend to be just sort of like go, and I don't take enough breaks. And, maybe it's not a bad idea for me to stop at a gas station or a dollar store like I did today and, at least get inside where I get out of the sun for a little bit, drink something cool, even if it's only a 15-minute break. But yeah, I pretty much pounded it all out today. Probably will do it a little differently tomorrow. I do have a lengthy bit of riding where there's nothing tomorrow, so I need to time things out better that way. Beautiful pelicans out. Wow, I mean, just the birds on this lake are fantastic. Never been to Lakeland. I think I've mentioned that. I haven't been here. And it's a beautiful town. I was talking to the folks that are hosting me tonight, the Airbnb, and they were saying that they had went away for 17 years and then came back, and that Lakeland's really upped its game in that 17-year time frame. But quite beautiful here in the near-in downtown area. Very walkable, very bikeable. Thumbs up, man. I would say for kind of the beginning of the assessment here, the route that I took from Tampa to Lakeland was about as good as it gets. I mean, to Lakeland at least, there is, and I have been confirming this, there's a northern route that would take you to sort of the northern outskirts of Orlando that would be more of an off-road trail. So if that's your bag, you may want to look into that. I think it was the Pinellas County Trail, which is part of the Cross Florida. I would say if you're more interested in a more southerly route, you're going to be on roads. You're going to have 50 mile per hour vehicles on your left side, but the shoulders were largely excellent the whole way. And the only few times where they weren't, there was almost always a sidewalk. It was not very rare on this first day where I ran into any issues where I was sharing a lot more with the vehicles. And in those instances, there were 2 lanes. So Florida law allows you to take the lane too, as I've learned. So I have zero complaints. I think that this has improved my understanding of what riding in Florida is like, at least this part. We'll see how things go the next couple of days. But yeah, I would say if you were interested in a winter route, you're not going to go too far wrong with this one. And yeah, I'm happy to have stumbled upon it.
Statistics. Day 1. Airline miles flown, 814. LCBs carried on planes, 1. Lifts lifted, 2. Strawberry Festival setups witnessed, 1. Strawberry Pop-Tarts desired, 1. Strawberry Pop-Tarts eaten, 0. Miles biked, 41.6. Tires dipped, 0. Flats, 0.
As always, we like to close out the show with a special shout out to the Pedalshift Society. Because of support from listeners like you, Pedalshift is a weekly bicycle touring podcast with a global community, expanding into live shows and covering new tours like my XFL trip this winter. If you like what you hear, you can support the show for $5, $2, or even $1 a month. And there's one-shot and annual options if you're not into the small monthly thing. Check it all out at pedalshift.net/society. On to the society. Kimberly Wilson, Caleb Jenkinson, Cameron Lane, Andrew McGregor, Michael Hart, Keith Nagel, Brock Dittis, Thomas Skadow, Marco Loeb, Terrence Manson, Noah Schroer, Harry Telgadas, Chris Barron, Mark Van Ram, Brad Hipwell, Stuart Buchan, Todd Stutz, Mr. T, Roxy Arning, Stephen Dickerson, Vince LaGreco, Paul Culbertson, Scott Culbertson, Cody Florchinger, Tom Beninati, Greg Braithwaite, John Mayer, Sandy Pizzio, Richard Patch, Jeff Muster, Seth Pollock, Dave Roll, Joseph Quinn, Susan Brewster, Drew Porter, Byron Patterson, Joachim Robber, Ray Jackson, Jeff Fry, Kenny Mikey, Lisa Hart, John Denkler, Steve Hankel,
Miguel Quinones, and Alejandro Aviles Reyes.
And thanks also to all past and anonymous contributors for making the show happen. Thank you for joining. You can find Pedalshift at pedalshift.net for more great bicycle touring content. You can hear the Pedalshift project through Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. Opening music courtesy of Jason Kent off his self-titled album. The track is called America. Check out his band Sunfield's latest release, Mono Mono, wherever cool music is available. A big thanks to Hawbuck Dyneema Wallets for sponsoring this episode. Go to hawbuck.camp to learn more about the ultralight high-tech wallet I carried on the Cross Florida tour.